And so Peggy said, I'm coming, but I'm bringing some people with me. And she brought Holly and Dawn and Lita. She would come. And you remember? And we did that for several years. And in fact, Dawn would come early and sit in the chair for about an hour before the meeting made. I don't know why she came early, but she did. And she really looked forward to it. And she called me one day, and we had taken a sabbatical from Hillcrest, because Dawn, we very loved this church. And it was Dawn that invited us.
And so I have to tell you what happened one time. You kind of know this.
Louder, Bill.
When they pray very quietly, and the head of the house does the praying. So we were down at the coast, down there on a fishing trip, and we were sitting there eating. Well, two things. My mother went up there to see him one time, was in the church, and she stood up and said, if nobody's going to talk, I'm going to talk about Texas. But we were at the family gathering down there, and we were holding hands, and Dick is the head of the family. So you hold hands, and when you get through, he squeezes your hand to tell you you're through. So he went and he squeezed their hands, and I looked up and I said, Dick, I'm not through yet. And I went and put my head back down. That didn't go over too well. Dawn was very, very special to me. She was part of our healing order, our Order of St. Luke. And years ago, when we were at the Baptist church, we were having one of our monthly meetings, and I went in and I said, Dawn, I'm going to go to school to be ordained. And she just looked at me and she said, that's what you're supposed to do. And that was a confirmation for me. That's one of the things that many of us believe. If God tells you something, you need to have it confirmed. And usually by a couple of people or others to confirm the situation. And she confirmed that for me. And she was such a blessing to our Order of St. Luke. She was a powerful prayer warrior. I mean, if you wanted somebody to pray for you for healing, go to Dawn, and she could do it. And I'll tell you, there are two books back over here, and I'm not going to tell you much about it. I'm going to let you talk about computers. You look it up. But I have those two books. It's Albert Eversheim, and he's a Jewish rabbi. I have those books. Just look him up and see what you think. And you'll know more about Dawn Hall when you read those books. And Dawn, gonna miss you so much. Love you, babe. Bye-bye.
Bill, I'm very glad to follow you because you're the one who assigns us to go to home communions. And Sue's not with us. Sue Allwright, she really wanted to be here today to honor the family and honor Dawn, but she's on her way to Gatlinburg, so we'll have to miss her. But she and I were a team, and we were privileged to be able to go the last couple of years when Dawn could not as easily come to church and offer her home communion. And so we had opportunity, and I usually took in my choir music, and we would sometimes sing things, and Sue would roll her eyes and says, I can't sing that. I said, yes, you can. And of course, Dawn could sing it, and she loved the songs. And I was privileged also to get to know some of the family members, and that has been a joy. Her granddaughter, of course, with her beautiful wedding and everything, and her reception at the Thorogoods, and we just are so grateful to have all the family here. Well, I also got a chance to meet her housemate, and that's Lita Mershak. And one day, a couple of years ago, she called me and she said, Betty, I'd like for you to go with me to Shabbat, and Lita's going to sing. I said, oh, I'd love to go. So about once a month, each month I would be invited to go and hear the Shabbat service on Friday night. And there's a lovely dinner, and Dawn loved to go. You know how much she loved Israel. And that was just a special, special blessing to her because they sing almost all of their service or chant, and it's so something she adored doing, and I was privileged to be able to do that with her.
I'm Karen Edwards, and I'm compared to many of you who've known Dawn for a long, long time. I only came to know her when I first came to this church in 2014, and met her at our small group, extended family group that meets on Wednesday nights. And I was very impressed by her, and perhaps a little intimidated by her knowledge of Scripture and knowledge of history. And I wasn't sure that she liked me, and that bothered me. But it didn't take long for me to change my mind and to see the love that she had and to appreciate the knowledge and insights that she would bring to our studies. But what really touched me, I have had a number of health issues over these years, and she was the one who would faithfully call me and pray for me. And and then I was able at one point to reciprocate, and she had become ill. And so I called her on the phone, and she was so surprised to have somebody call her. But I prayed for her on the phone, and she prayed for me. And that became kind of our pattern, where we would pray for each other on the phone, knowing that we didn't have the ability to get together face to face. Even this last time that she was in the hospital this last year, in and out, I went to the hospital for a few days, and when I went to rehab, she called me. And she was barely out of the hospital herself. And I was so amazed to hear from her that, as some of the material has said, she was such a faithful prayer warrior that she took that time, and it was important for her to do that. And she was very faithful. So I know that God has welcomed her with welcome thy good and faithful servant. And we will miss her. I'll miss having her pray with me and for me. And but I know that she's in heaven rejoicing with the angels. And thank you.
Dawn did have her time with our extended family. The first time I ever encountered Dawn was when we were at the old Resurrection. My boys, they were like, I don't know, 5, 3, 1. They're little boys, and they were misbehaving in church, and I'm at a point where I'm trying to focus on church, and they're goofing around like little boys do, and then I heard this voice behind them saying, "The Lord is not very happy with little boys who misbehave in church." My little boys would all go like this, and they turn around, and there's Dawn staring at them. I thought, wow. I said, I like her. She scares me too. And there were many times I really started getting to know Dawn as well until she did become part of our extended family. And the privilege that the Lord gave me was that I was Dawn's ride. I'd go pick her up, and I'd take her home. And I used to enjoy the conversations we had. See, the Lord gifted Dawn with she was gifted very high intellectually. She was very smart, but she was also funny too. And I would many times just start a conversation just to see just exactly how much she knew about certain things, you know, just testing her out. I brought up the conversation about moonshining, how they used to run at moonshine. And lo and behold, she had a story very similar to that. She said there was a place where she used to live at a time when milk was scarce where she lived. She had to cross the border, cross the state line to go get milk for her family. And that was illegal, to go buy milk across the state line and bring it back. And we started laughing at that. I said, I bet you had a 454, you were probably shooting over like the old Dukes of Hazzards, getting that milk back across state line, you know. We were laughing and joking about that, and, you know. And we were talking about when she was a teacher as well. Paul Stoller I guess he's not here. Paul Stoller is a teacher as well. He was in our extended family. I used to listen to Don and Paul debate back and forth in regards to education and schooling and teaching and everything like that. And that was interesting to people highly intellect. I couldn't keep up with either of them, but it was still fun to watch and listen. I remember I used to like, most of you who know me, I'm a kidder. I like to make people laugh. With the women, I kind of flirty kid, okay? That's just to make you laugh and make you feel good. I did that with Dawn too. I remember one night we were ending, and I said, well, I gotta get my girlfriend home before the lights come on. She got a kick out of that and started laughing. I was gonna pick her up one time and said, well, Dawn, when I come out of honking, you come out of running. She started laughing that one too and said, oh, it's been a while since I've come a running, you know. So it was, I got to enjoy the humorous side of Dawn, but we had many great conversations just in those little 20 minutes of driving back and forth. She talked about when she was a teacher, she taught at places where most folks didn't want to go.
Combat zone, she called her.
But she did. She saw an importance about bringing education to those who need it, and she wasn't scared to tread where a lot of teachers don't want to go. And I thought that brings me to admire her a whole lot. Her heart was for serving and helping people, that very much so. So she had a serving heart, a loving heart, and she did put others before her. So she left me with a loving impression for the first time I met this scary woman who was chastising my boys, to a loving woman that I'm going to miss. And I appreciate her so much that the Lord gave us a chance to get to know each other.
Amen.
Thank you.
Not that great at getting up in front of people. That was what my husband did best. I was married to Dawn's oldest son, and a lot of you know that he passed away last June. So I'm not off the hook to get up in front of people anymore. I have to get up and say what I think. I met Dawn several years before I met Mark. We were students together at SMSU in Springfield, Missouri. And I met her in a sociology class where the professor had given us a set of questions to answer, and based on our dialect and our answers and responses, he was going to tell us where we came from. He guessed me from downtown Chicago. I am probably the original hillbilly of this group. I actually grew up in southern Missouri, in a place that we didn't have water or electricity in the house. We lived like the Ingalls family. So, because I was the only one that the professor missed, Dawn decided she wanted to get to know me a little better. And she often came to my dorm room for the next several years, and we'd just sit and chat in between classes, and I got to know her very, very well. So, I wanted to say, she gave me a sense of family. I had family, and they do care about, my family does care, but they weren't very good at showing it. And there were questions that were taboo that we just didn't ask. And because I had some social issues similar to what Dawn had, I would always say the wrong thing and stick my foot in my mouth and not know why somebody was offended with me, because that wasn't what I wanted to do. She explained those things to me and explained to me how I could overcome that. And I shudder to think what kind of person I would be today if I had not met her. She gave me so much insight over the years. It's very, very hard to lose her, especially this year with also losing Mark. Anyway, she taught me that family is more than just blood, because I was family before I was related to her. She taught me that there was no boundary line on that the Lord set the boundaries there, and whoever He called to be family was family, and we should accept them. And that's a sorry lesson today. A lot of people don't know that. Someone mentioned that she had taught in areas that most people would consider a war zone or a combat zone. She told us a story that she was actually escorted to her car one night by a young man who had the Krebs insignia, and she allowed him to escort her. And she was probably wondering in the back of her mind, am I going to get mugged here? She allowed him to escort her, and when they got to the car, she asked him why he did it. And he said, we take care of the teachers who take care of ours. So she knew that the Lord was protecting her. She heard from the Holy Spirit. I cannot tell you the number of times she called me when there was a problem that she couldn't possibly have known about, and she just talked to me about it. She would call us out of the blue sky. We wouldn't hear from her for a year, and then she would call us right in the middle of a crisis. And she knew what was going on. She was talking to the Lord and responding to Him. I wish I had her gift for being there when it is needed and knowing exactly what to say. She just seemed to let the Lord lead her in that area. Now, she would stick her foot in her mouth just like I did. That's how she knew how to tell me how to get out of that. And she still did it sometimes. But her heart was in the right place, and she knew how to love people. And that's a gift we all need.
I walked in and it's chaos in the kitchen. 7 kids, well, excuse me, 6. Marky wasn't there at that time. Everybody talking at once. And I just kind of, slip in and like, where do I sit? What do I do? And Dawn just came over and grabbed me by the shoulders and said, sit right here, introduced me. She and Carl adopted me. It was the first family that I had that loved me. And I loved them, and I still love every one of them. Even Sheila. Sheila and I have had our differences, but we love each other.
Yes, very much.
And the last few months, I called about every week to talk with Dawn. And we talked about every little thing, anything that popped in our minds. But I remember finally getting old enough to decide what I might do with my life. And I came out one morning and I said, I need a ride to Newburgh. And Dawn says, it's about time. I went and signed up for the Army. She knew that I was going to be doing that long before I knew. That changed my life. I was no longer a shy person, obviously. Well, I still am shy, but I know how to reach beyond the shyness. A love of learning has never left me because I was encouraged by Dawn. I won't even tell you how many degrees I've gotten since then. I mean, I can't even count them. Because she kept saying, well, do you think you know all about it now? No. She said, well, go back and learn more. So back I went and learned more. My daughter grew up with her, knowing her as Grandma Dawn. And my daughter has the same reputation with horses that I had. We're both cowgirls. That's all there is to it. And Becky and Ruthie, if Becky was here, she'd tell you. We kind of snuck over to a farm while we were down there in upstate New York. And we all went horseback riding, bareback. You remember that? No? Well, you were just a little shaver. And of course, before we got home, Dawn already knew we had already crossed the fence and gone into the neighbor's yard with the horse. Yeah, should ask first. I have horses. I learn every day from my horses. They are amazing. And just like Dawn was amazing. And her whole family. I mean, every single one of them. The gift of family to them is just awesome. And I'm thankful to be a part of it. Thank you, whole family.
So I'm Bonita. I am one of the many grandchildren that I belong to this one. You can see my lovely picture for my quinceañera over on the table.
And beautiful.
Yes, I still am.
Yes, you are.
So I spent a summer sometime after with Grandma, sometime after Grandpa passed away. And it was a fun summer. Well, I was like, I'm still in her, but I love books. I always have, I always will. And we went to this bookstore that Grandma has all this, what is it, like, when they turn in, you know, you have
Credits.
Credits, there you go. We have credits. And she's like, okay, go ahead and pick out anything you want. And I said, oh, okay. And so she's like, oh no, don't worry about it. I got credits. You okay, go get it. And I went over there, I said, okay. And I came back with a whole basket that I couldn't even carry. I'm like, what, 12, 13? I couldn't even carry the basket back. And she's like, whoa. Most kids come back with like can't even find one book. You have like 40 there. And I was like, well, you said anything I wanted. Remember, that was about it. Well, they're still in my collection. One of them was actually the children's one that made a PBS show.
Yeah, those fight words, that's right. I don't think I want to be in front of that one. I do want to say that I know a lot of you saw me go up there and sing. The reason that I sang that song, most people wouldn't know because it was a private moment, really. But myself and her had gotten together as my father was passing, and we sang that song as he was passing. And that's why I needed to bring it up today. So that's, yeah. Her voice was so wonderful when she was singing, and she left that legacy. That's what I remember. One of the main things I remember. Just kind of emotionally dwell on it. So, yeah, I grew up with it.
All right. My name's Ben Hall. I'm also Dawn's grandson. I belong to Andy, who's been talking the most nervously. I realize it's weird to say her name, and everyone's over here saying Dawn, 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 this. And, you know, I grew up, she's an animal. I didn't think much of it. In fact, I think I finally realized what her name was when I started coming to this church with her. And everyone's like, oh, you're Dawn's grandson, you're Dawn's grandson. I'm like, yeah, okay. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I'm not Father Dawn's grandson, what are you talking about? It didn't make sense, and then finally, you know, it took me a second. I mean, I was 11, right? So. The memory I want to share is, it's pretty personal, but, you know, that's today, right? When I graduated high school, I maybe had read 10 books in my life, not including the ones, you know, signed for school that you have to read, but like for pleasure. I didn't like reading much, never really did. I like watching TV and playing video games, you know. But 7 of those books were the Chronicles of Narnia. And I read, actually, that series 3 times. The first time I read it was when we had just moved back to Texas. My dad retired from the Air Force, we moved back to Texas. My mom and my dad, they had to work. So my grandparents were babysitting us. And of course, as a 6-year-old, 7-year-old kid, I'm bored. I want entertainment. And you know, they don't want to turn on the TV or anything. They want me to learn. So Nana started reading me The Magician's Nephew. Started from book 1. And she got about halfway through, and I remember I was over again, I went, I knew exactly where they were. I went, pulled out the bookshelf, brought it to her and said, I want you to read. Well, she was feeling a little tired that day, or at least that's what she told me. And she handed the book back and said, no, I want you to read to me. And so the next couple times that I was over, I read to her. And we pretty much made through most of the Chronicles of Narnia with that kind of cadence, where she would read some of it, I would read to her, she would read some, I'd read to her. And it was just one of those things that, you know, I just fell in love with the series, and so I went ahead when we didn't make it all the way through, but then I borrowed them from her and kept reading all the way through the series. Then in high school, I read through it again because our teacher challenged us. She's like, read 10 books this year. And I said, well, I already know 7 that I can read. And then the movies came out, so I'm like, well, this is a good reason to start reading them again. So since then, you know, I've been trying to read more because I'm almost 30 now, and that's probably something I should do. But every time I'm reading a book, I compare it to the feeling I get when I read the Chronicles of Narnia, any of them. And if the book kind of meets that standard and I get that same joy, I mean, I read with my inner voice. I read with her voice. I hear it still to this day. And so that's kind of what was going on today when I was up reading. I don't know if y'all told, but I was getting a little choked up. It's tough because in my head, as I was reading those words, I heard Nana's voice. And so just wanted to share that with you all. Thank you so much.
Naomi, also granddaughter. My dad is Mark, who passed away last summer. And Mom and I have been making trips up to see Nana. We're in Kansas City. We made it out quite a few times this last year. And even when we were here, I would call her and talk for hours. She was good at that. It's rightly said that Nana was a teacher. That's a recurring theme in all of these. And I think I learned that from her. It was a skill that she honed throughout her long life. And as her granddaughter, I benefited from what she had learned from all of her triumphs and failures as a teacher.